I just love the this scrolling gradient. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a very cool model called UIGEN-T2-7B. Now, based on the name, you may have been able to guess that this model is specifically focused on generating front-end UI for websites, and apparently based off of some of the samples we see here on the Hugging Face model card, it is quite impressive. Now, interestingly enough, this is actually a fine-tune of Qwen2.5 Coder 7B, but it is trained on a 50,000 sample data set designed to generate HTML and Tailwind CSS code, which is quite aesthetically pleasing at times. So, assuming this model works well, this could generate some really cool and nice results. To date, when doing the testing I like to do, which revolves around generating HTML websites for Steve's PC repair and things like that, the GLM family of models has far exceeded anything I've seen to date. So I am really excited to try this model here. I don't have too much to say in terms of actually going over it on the Hugging Face model card and things like that, but just based off of some of the samples we see here, as well as the actual slightly article of training data, it looks really impressive, like this and this and this. For a 7B local model, I have high hopes based off of what I'm seeing right here. So really, we're going to go ahead and just begin running this locally. I am using LM Studio for this. I do have it downloaded. However, I have not loaded it in yet. I am using a system with two 3090 Ti's, which will be more than capable of running this 8-bit quant of this 7 billion parameter model. I'm going to go ahead and load the model in right now. We do have recommended parameters of a 0.7 temp and a top P of 0.9. So I will actually modify those before I go ahead and load the model in. If we go into the inference tab right here, so this should be 0.7 and then top P should just be dropped down 0.05 to 0.9. Now, they do mention here that you have to use this system prompt, so I am going to copy paste this into the system prompt settings here, as well as I don't want to kind of basically mess this up. I will try to max the context length. Everything else I'm going to keep the same. And once it loads in, we'll be able to take a peek. All right, so it is using around 7.5 gigabytes on either card. So a total right now of, call it 15 gigs of VRAM, as there's some overhead for the system. So I'll just test it first, make sure it's working and lucid. Obviously, this model is not designed to just do some chat and things like that, but we're getting an initial speed of 80 tokens per second around there. So let's just go ahead and generate a Steve's PC repair HTML website. I am not going to be trying this with Python code, game generation, things like that, as it is not in the scope of what this model is capable of doing, and therefore I don't think it would be too fair. So I'm going to try this real quick, and it doesn't seem like the chain of thought is properly working here in terms of actually displaying it within the LM Studio interface. However, I'm going to just kind of ignore that because we're more focused on the end results here. I will just briefly kind of see what it's thinking of doing here, as this could give us a little just insight into what we might expect in some of the capabilities that this model holds in terms of aesthetic UI generation. So it is starting from a layout foundation, which is pretty cool. So it's thinking about layout, typography, color-wise, yellow-orange gradient. Ugh, I don't like what I hear there. Hopefully it changes that. Instead of raw SVGs, use tabular icons, navigation, then it's thinking about images. So this is just quite interesting testimonials because it's thinking through this in seemingly a very logical and structured manner, which I do believe I saw in the model card here. Something just kind of relating to that in terms of it is like informed by thoughtful design principles, which just based off of that little kind of process here would seem to add up. So I will stop talking now, and then we'll basically just go ahead and see what we've got here. All right, so that is our end of solution. It generated 4,400 tokens at 77 tokens per second. I do have high hopes here, I'm going to be honest with you. So, wow, okay, this is decent. This is really quite decent. So, okay, sorry, I always have to take a second to parse the results before I can immediately begin speaking about them. And the reason I was initially impressed here, I think, is I'm going to close this and then reopen it. The way it all loads in was very nice and kind of elegant. So everything kind of is like, hello, if you know what I mean. But okay, I'm not a huge fan of the orange/yellow color scheme. I think that's quite abhorrent and hideous. But aside from that, it did a nice job. It's organized nicely. The fake testimonials are not only there, but they're actually using photos of actual people. So that is something I don't think I've seen any other model do. I have seen models generate photos along with the fake testimonial cards, but they're usually like more akin to a profile picture of an object or something like that. So that is good. Their Wi-Fi repair saved my sanity. All right, that sounds like a like a scam, like on a old person's laptop. It would pop up and be like, your Wi-Fi needs repair, and then boom, like they gave away your inheritance. But not bad. Get in touch. Let's see. Okay, there is no hover effect on that. I don't see hover effects on these, which I would like to see, but we do have a pretty big context length here. So I think what I am going to do is go ahead and actually prompt it for some changes to what it's generated here. Seeing that this model is designed to do a good job at this, I don't want to just kind of one-shot a bunch of different tests. I'd like to do more in-depth testing with fewer overall prompts, if you will. So let's just ask it for some changes. All right, so I have prompted it for some changes just based off of what I would want. And this is obviously more in line with actually using a model for coding tasks as opposed to just doing a one-shot test, because in a real world use case, I would assume that someone would basically need a website. They would ask for it. They would get a result like this, and then they would have changes they would want to make, which they would then therefore kind of jot down and ask. All right, so we'll go ahead and now look at our updated site. All right. It changed the color palette successfully. It did not do anything here, so it's still, oh, so that's, okay. It didn't fix those, which I wanted it to do, and I don't see any hover effect. It did change the footer. So it successfully changed the footer and the color palette. However, it did not add hover effects or anything like that onto the services, which I'd asked it to do. And it also did not put photos here. Oh, I may have made an error. So there are hover effects, but they're not immediately visible. You really have to kind of stay over it. And then I don't know how well this will show on camera, but then it kind of puts like a shadow under it, emulating like it's slowly coming out and being more prominent. So it did actually do that. That is my mistake. I'm now going to try to get it to generate basically a static page for a SaaS startup or software as a service, which would include payment plans and just elegant kind of sign up things to hook customers. All right, so I've basically given it a prompt to generate a good looking web page for a cloud GPU rental startup renting NVIDIA 2000 series GPUs. I'm just asking it to make it very modern, something that can be shown to potential investors and customers, and also add in anything that it might think would help the site. Now, I do want to quickly mention, I'm not sure that I haven't like messed something up right here for it to be generating its responses right here. However, truth be told, I have two things to say about that. One of those is that my allergies are just absolutely killing me right now. So if I'm a little out of it, that may be why. And two, it still seems to be functioning pretty well. So I don't think that would be a net negative in terms of the end generation result. All right, let's check out our GPU rental site. That is actually not bad. Okay, it did a fantastic job on. This is very much in the scope of what you would expect to see in a pricing plan or something for a site like this. It is quite simple, and I will say something that I'm upset about is there doesn't seem to be really like clear breaks between the different elements on the page in terms of the plans page and the journey page. Part of that is that it's just not doing a good job getting some of its images in. So it does seemingly have links and know about certain public domain placeholder images that it is capable of using, but I don't see them in a lot of scenarios. And this also happened with Steve's PC. I do like how it kind of did GPU for rent. It tried its best to make something that looks akin to a logo, even though it was just a name. Cloud GPUs at your fingertips, access powerful cloud. Okay. Then there's a get started button, and this should realistically be a photo here of like a cluster or something related. We have the free plan, the starter plan, and it's cool that it does the checks and then the X, which is pretty cool. And actually went ahead and wrote out like what our plans offer. So that's only 1 GPU, up to 4, unlimited, priority service level agreement and support, dedicated account manager. These do have nice hover effects. It even went ahead and gave us pricing, which I didn't even give it. So our journey. And then if there was some slight adjustments here, like pictures, and then perhaps some form of differentiation between this section and this, it would be really excellent. The gradient down here is very fitting of this style of site, and it does have the like social icons. It even knew to put a GitHub here because this is more of a SaaS thing. So that is quite good. I can't say I haven't seen this before because I haven't tested like a SaaS page like this, but that is a nice integration there. So this was quite decent. I now want to try to see how well it will generate basically like a customer sign up page for something that has not launched yet and is still in stealth mode, but the page needs to be a very specific style. I'm not giving it too much here, just basically saying that it's a mysterious sign up page for a stealth startup that is going to be 8-bit retro style handhelds. Basically what I'm hoping to see here is just a static page, obviously with enter your email here, but with some form of like movement or something like that in a retro 8-bit kind of pixel art style. So I would be interested in this. It's funny, in some ways I don't like reading this here because I just want to kind of see what the end result it generates with. It's almost like a ooh, okay, so we've gotten a little issue here that it didn't properly generate the result in Markdown for it to be copy-pasted, so. All right, cool. So it is actually going ahead and fixing that issue, which is something I noticed that 5.4 Reasoning and Reasoning Plus were also able to do, which was nice to see. All right. Ooh. All right. So it didn't give me the pixel art 8-bit style that I asked for, but I will say that this UI design here, just this little sign-up card is really quite elegant. And I have to say, I'm impressed with this. And wow, look at the hover effect on this button. Not only does the gradient kind of invert when you hover over it, but then it has like a glow effect that comes out, which is really cool. And the background gradient is actually, if you can see, slowly going back and forth. This is, I understand this is very simple and it's like a static sign up page, but like this is better than some things I've seen before. So, and it added, don't worry, we won't spam you. I love that. If I click sign up, please fill out this field. We have a ton more of a context window. So, all right, so first we're just going to take a look at this. So I asked it to basically generate the full site for the startup using the same exact stylistic elements. Let's go ahead and see if it successfully was able to do that. It absolutely did. Okay, fantastic. I like this a lot. Look at, again, this is simple, but it's good. And this as a sort of, what would the terminology for such a thing be? This as like a sort of blank slate for you to then kind of mold and play with is really acceptable in my opinion. I mean, I like this. The colors work well together. They're dark and kind of purplish, which I suppose could work, but the hover effects and things like that, even if you just took small pieces of this, like these hover effects, things like this, it wouldn't be bad. It put in pricing here. Enterprise pricing is expensive. This startup's going to make some good money. And obviously you click on these, nothing happens right now. It is 2024, which, okay, that's annoying, but the button, okay, so this doesn't have the beautiful glow effect that this one did right here, but I suppose that's okay. Does this one? No. Okay, so it just has kind of like a gradient swap when you hover over it, but that's all right. Weaknesses are complex JavaScript activity requires some manual implementation. However, based on the fact that this is based off Qwen2.5 Coder 7b, I do think it will be able to handle what I want to ask it here, which is basically just using HTML and JavaScript, make a really beautiful, well done Pong game in the browser. This aligns well with the flexibility and efficiency of use heuristic from Nielsen, ensuring both novice and power users have easy control pathways. All right, 78 tokens per second, so pretty good. All right, I have high hopes here. All right, well, hopes have been dashed. All right, so I needed to make sure that it wasn't a browser-specific issue, and unfortunately it wasn't. So based on this, I don't think we're going to be getting a functional Python game here. A functional JavaScript Pong game. However, there is a test now I want to do. I don't know why I thought of this, but it's kind of a refusal test, kind of a test to see how well it can do stuff. Okay, so absolutely zero issues with doing this. It just starts out, I recognize creating an extremely well done Bitcoin duplicator site demands meticulous attention. All right, so it's just thinking about usability patterns. That works. I mean, it's a fine tune of Qwen2.5 7B Coder instruct. So obviously it's, you know, if I asked Phi, I do believe we would get a no. Johnny's Bitcoin duplicator website is now complete, and perhaps we have a new test born. This is probably going to be way long. It always happens. I'm like, this is going to be a quick video, especially now. I feel horrible because of allergies, but I get into it and then, like, I don't want to stop. Okay, let's see. Johnny's Bitcoin duplicator. Duplicate Bitcoin easily. I love it. Wallet address. It even put like the little bank logo, secret key, amount to duplicate. This is well done. I said it needs to just be really simple. Okay, this is a gradient, I think, but the black is kind of like, eh. Enter your wallet address, enter your secret key, amount to duplicate. I love it. Responsive grid from mobile to desktop. All right, let's see. Oh yeah. Yep, I could see that. So I wasn't going to include this, but now I'm curious just from like a fooling around perspective. I changed it to 5.14 reasoning plus, 5.4.14b reasoning plus. And I asked it, I need the website. It's like, absolutely not. It thought a lot about it. And then it said no. Then I swapped back to UIGEN and I said, please. And it was like, okay, here you go. Johnny's Bitcoin. I just love the like this scrolling gradient. All right, well, hold on. I'm sorry. This video has gone way on a tangent. I'm barely asking it anything in terms of direction. Just saying I need production ready, feature packed website for a travel agency. Okay, so it did put a map in here, which is actually kind of cool. So it integrated Google Maps. It default set to Nigeria. I don't know. Okay, maybe this is a travel agency based for like stuff like that, but it would have done much better. This would have been quite a decent result if there were actually working functional stock images right here. Again, I do want to just check this in a different browser just to rule out that there may be user error or something going on here causing the images not to load. Okay, so that is not the case. The hover effects look good, everything like that. The map works well, which is nice. It definitely really did a decent job, and I would say that if it had loaded the images in correctly, this would have been a stellar, although simple, result. All right, so I've asked it for like a pop culture blog in the style of a website where you know the articles are coming from opinionated millennials. It's basically, I recognize immediately that strong contrast between dark backgrounds with bright accent colors is essential here. Yeah, all right, so I would say so. All right, let's check it out. The photos are, I apologize if these are real people. I did not mean that. Passionate millennials who love to dive deep. Okay, it's got like the like sherbet color. I don't know why I thought of that, but the gradient is like mango/yellow. This is a good, as it said, template. If you were to basically go ahead and just give this a little more pop in terms of images, this is a little crooked here. If we bring it down to mobile, it actually looks much better. So this seemingly would do very good in mobile web design tasks or mobile UI design tasks, definitely like that. Games and trends analyst, music and culture critic, movie and gaming enthusiast. So it did somewhat do a decent job here. The kind of white and black, just with like a thin black line here, and then the menu is not bad. So that's definitely like a mobile style hamburger menu up there that appeared. Oh, so it did do that. It automatically scales to a mobile hamburger style menu. Unfortunately, it's not currently working in this. Let me go ahead and just test it in Chrome real quick. All right, let's see. Nope. Okay, so it wasn't a browser specific issue. I just do need to rule that out sometimes now so I don't do a disservice to the things I'm testing. But overall, I mean, this really, it's quite decent. All right, so I wanted to just quickly show this. This is what GLM49B did for Steve's PC repair website. Again, this was a one-shot thing. So I do want to just give this as some level of comparison, as I do believe comparing this with GLM is something that a lot of folks are going to want to see and be interested in. So what we just saw right there in my YouTube video was GLM49B. So this, what we're going to see here, is UIGEN-7B. And again, this was just after asking it to change the color palette. So everything else here was pretty much the same as the one-shot generation. So we can see that it is not as good as GLM, what GLM did. However, it is smaller and it did do a relatively comparable job, I would say. Really, the big weak point I see right here is that the static or placeholder images that it tries to put in certain parts of the page just do not appear, which makes the end result look a bit less polished, if you will. Also, the footer is far simpler than what we saw with GLM, but being that these are both models that excel at these sorts of UI and UX design tasks, I wanted to just give, albeit one simple example of the generations comparatively. Again, this is a slightly smaller model, and this is a fine-tune of Qwen2.5 7B Coder on 50,000 samples of like UX and UI design. I am very much interested in seeing the evolution of these models and things like that, because they do actually mention here in their training article that the initial one was just trained on 400 samples. So this is a 125 times increase, assuming that we're to scale up a bit more, and being that there are new Qwen3 models out now, though non-coding specific currently, this could potentially be an extremely potent future option, and it currently is quite all right. I mean, it's elegant. I find its thought process in terms of actually kind of systemically going through the things it wants to organize and things like that is very well done. It seemingly is trained very well to understand design, functionality, and aesthetics and things of that sort. So that's going to wrap this up. I apologize if this video was a little more or less lucid than normal. My allergies are pretty bad and I'm struggling. So with that, thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments.